big weekend coming up at Monmouth Park. It is Haskell weekend. We have 5 graded stakes on the card. There's actually another stakes race that's going to be in the middle of a pick 4 sequence that has all stakes that will end with the grade 1 Haskell. And I had to bring in my good friend because I know this man has spent many a day at New Jersey racetracks over there at Monmouth Park and at the Meadowlands, and he knows the lay of the land over there. And Darin Zoccali, who you've heard talk with me, races, wrestling, all sorts all the time. He does great work with Twin Spires. DZ, this is a good Haskell, like a really good group in the Haskell as the feature.
No, it really is. It's a combination of accomplished, proven runners from the Triple Crown Trail, plus lightly raced horses that clearly have talent and upside. It's a really good just combination of different types of 3-year-olds, some that have had big first halves of the season, others that look like they could have potentially a big second half of the season. And that's what you want when you get to these kind of midsummer races. It kind of brings the entire 3-year-old crop together from one end of the spectrum to the other. 8-horse field, the Haskell doesn't ever get like 11, 12 horses, but I don't think you could ask for a much stronger group on paper. And it's from a betting standpoint, a lot of really cool variables at play here from a pace standpoint, from a handicapping standpoint, that really just makes it a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think all 3 of the horses who are probably the 3 betting choices too, you could have like serious knocks on them.
Yeah.
And that's what makes a betting race fun, when you think that the favorites at least look like they could be vulnerable on paper for different reasons. You had pointed out on social media the other day, I don't know if it seems like Haskell is the type, or Monmouth is the type of a track for a horse like Tapit Trice. That just sort of seems weird. Mage, this was like plan B or C. They called an audible like last minute with this, which is always sort of weird. And they're talking about like they're using this as a prep race for Mage, which is at least something to mention and something that seemed a little bit alarming. And then the horse who might take the most money to the outside for Baffert, Arabian Night. We haven't seen this horse run since January. We don't really know how far he wants to go or really how good he is based on what he's done. So right at that point, you have the 3 horses who are going to take money, and you have some reasons to maybe poke holes in all of them.
Yeah, we just recorded one of our roundtable discussions for Twin Spires, and I literally made that exact same point. All 3 of the shortest prices in the morning line, you can have legitimate concerns. The concern with Mage is one of, they've been saying very vocally that their goal is the Travers.
Mm-hmm.
And they are using this race to really tighten the screws and get him ready for the Travers. That doesn't mean he can't win.
No.
But what it does mean is this is not the race that throughout the entire training since the Preakness that they've had circled on the calendar. This is simply the next step that they're taking in his campaign. Tapit Trice, like you just talked about, deep closer, gets off to slow starts repeatedly. Monmouth Park obviously is not the racetrack for that, and we'll get into that as we discuss the race further. And Arabian Night, if you're going to take him as the chalk, you're taking a horse that has not run in 6 months. And, listen, beating horses like Red Route 1 is a lot different than beating the Kentucky Derby winner and Tapit Trice and some other really good 3-year-olds right now. So, like you just said, it's interesting for me from a handicapping standpoint because, when I'm looking at the multi-race exotics, I might not use any of those 3. And I might take a big swing here.
I completely agree. You have a couple fun upside horses who sort of look like, those are kind of the horses I like to play in the Haskell, that I sort of get reminded of when I look at Extra Anejo and Go Rocket Ride a little, who might be the sort of right now type horses. But that'll be the headliner on Saturday at Monmouth Park. We will get you there as we start in race number 8. There's actually a graded stakes race in the 5th as well. But we're going to dive in and look at the past performances from DRF as we navigate the way. I know I'm DRF, Darin's Twin Spires. We can actually talk to each other, DZ, without fighting. It does happen. It does happen here and there as we navigate our way through. We look at Monmouth Park's 8th race. DZ, I think the reason why they put this race earlier and they didn't give you 4 consecutive graded stakes races is because on paper you'll likely you have a heavy favorite. You have Proxy, who's 3-5. He's been coming out of some of the better graded stakes races for older horses over the last couple years. He's classy, no doubt about it, and when he runs his best race, it's very good. he's just one of those horses who seems like he's his own worst enemy. He seems like a really hard horse to ride. He's kind of quirky. He seems like he gets lazy and maybe lost in the middle of races sometimes. So again, a horse who like on class totally stands out in this race. He just doesn't seem to me like instantly I wouldn't have thought Monmouth Park and him are a marriage.
Yeah, so that's a really good point. Look, on class, he's by far the most accomplished horse in the race, and it's not close.
Yeah, no doubt.
But when you watch him run, and especially recently, the rider really gets his money's worth because you got to ride this horse from start to finish.
Yep.
He's almost like a Drosselmeyer type where you got to just keep pedaling.
Grinding on him.
Yeah. And there are times like in the Santa Anita handicap and the Oaklawn handicap where I've watched him, and both times I thought he was completely done.
Yep.
And somehow he makes this miraculous recovery.
The Oaklawn one in particular, I thought, right? He looked so done there. And then
exactly, yeah.
Just boom, kicks into another gear.
Yeah, exactly. And in watching those races, you know, Monmouth Park is not the type of track that is going to be conducive to that. Now,
if he loses touch in the middle of, you know what I mean, in like at the half mile point of the race and he's eight or 9 lengths back.
Right. Now, this race, the interesting dynamic for me is where is the speed coming from?
Absolutely.
You know, I mean, Higher Quality was literally a horse running in a $10,000 claim or two starts ago, and he might legitimately make the lead by default, if not for maybe Wayland Springs on the outside. But
and I think that was, if I was looking to play this race, I think that was where I would go to the 7, just based on what I think by process of elimination, he could be close. He'll be more forwardly placed. I actually thought his race last time out was pretty good. He was wide all the way around. And it was one of those races where you just sort of felt like he was going to stop, and he kept going. And when you look at him, he at least has like a race or two last year where you could see he was starting to get really good when he won those 3 races in a row. Then he's in the Chick Lang, and then he's off, you know, from May to November. So let's excuse the Chick Lang. He shows back up. Maybe he needs the race at Indy. You know, he runs in 4 races in a row at Oaklawn against pretty tough company too. I know the races aren't great, but he's losing to good horses. Skelly has won 5 in a row. Like, you look at some of the speed figures, Albizu has won with 97 and 95 speed figures in the last 2. Skelly's last 4 Beyer speed figures, 95, 100, 105. 101 in the mix too. So not exactly bad company. I think he's probably the most intriguing horse to me in here if I was going to look to play against Proxy.
Yeah, and the interesting thing for him is that he stretched out to a mile for the first time last time out and responded with a win because he was a 6 furlong specialist to start his career. Yeah, if I'm playing multi-race exotics or even the verticals, and I'm trying to beat Proxy here, which I could certainly understand why you would want to do that. Wayland Springs and Anti-Gravity coming out of the same case. Like, if you like Wayland Springs, you can't dismiss Anti-Gravity. I understand that he's a different pace dynamic, but he was only a couple of lengths behind Wayland Springs throughout the early stages of that race, was favored against him, came up a half length short. So those would be the 2 that I would look at. I wish Calibrate had a little bit more early speed because I do think he's good enough.
He fits.
To beat Proxy. He fits, yes.
But the problem is, if we're trying to beat Proxy and we're playing a horse like Calibrate, right? He's almost like the same type of horse, right? As far as just like he's going to be coming from probably really way out of it. And I don't know if he's going to offer enough value. So it wouldn't shock me if he wins and he gets that kind of a trip. But I think as we're talking it out, if we're looking to play against the short price here, we're probably looking for horses that are going to either be much bigger prices or will get a more advantageous trip.
Oh, I totally agree with that. You know, and if people are wondering and saying, well, are you just trying to beat Proxy just because you don't want to play the horse who's going to be 3 to 5? That's not what it is. I really can't emphasize enough. And I urge people to watch the replays. If you know Monmouth Park and you know how that track plays and you watch this horse's running style, it's just a very weird fit for this horse to go to Monmouth. And it's really a bit of a questionable spot for him to go. And I understand he didn't run well in the Stephen Foster at all. And maybe they're just looking to get a bit of a confidence builder into him.
Like from a class standpoint, I wouldn't shock me at all if they're like, hey, let's get a little relief, right? Let's find a
Mhm.
softer spot. But like the track, this spot did seem a little strange.
It is.
It just
Yeah.
didn't seem like the type of track that would be beneficial for him. I feel like you could have chalked up a few different races at Saratoga that I think may have fit better
Oh,
for him
yeah.
with his running style. You just feel like with the way that track plays sometimes, how it's tougher on front runners and better for horses like this who probably have a little more stamina.
Sure. But he would have been running in the Whitney if he ran better in the Foster. I mean,
Sure,
I would think for sure.
absolutely.
And it's certainly plausible that they're trying to get him, back to the Woodward or the Jockey Club Gold Cup, and eventually get him to the Breeders' Cup Classic. I mean, I would have to imagine that is probably the way Godolphin has kind of moved this out, or maybe running the Lucas Classic as
I
a
mean,
prep.
and look, when he went to he went to Southern California, and when he went to and ran in the Santa Anita
Yeah.
Handicap against those foes, he was right there. There's no reason a horse like this couldn't go down to Del Mar, even, you know what I mean, in the Pacific Classic and be a
Sure.
player if he were to get back into a good race. It's a strange spot.
Yeah,
3 to 5.
our collector would have been a near cinch in this race if he didn't bruise his hoof, by the way.
And that's what you were letting me know a little before when we started
because
recording.
when the entries came out, I thought he was supposed to be in here, and then I saw he wasn't there, and I looked it up, and I saw he had a foot abscess. But the way
With
this
his
race
speed,
came up with his speed, I mean, he would have been a stone cold single.
His cruising speed and his class, he would have just sat right behind the 4 or just gone right to the lead,
Exactly.
and that would have been game over for everybody else. Maybe take a little swing with Wheeland Springs on the outside if you're looking against Proxy. DZ and I also agree that the 1 makes a whole lot of sense. They're coming out of the same race. They both fit really well. Dan Ward, shout out to Dan. He was, when I was starting at TVG and when I was having to do interviews and stuff, when I would be out at the track, Jerry Hollendorfer never liked doing interviews and didn't want to. Dan Ward was awesome. He was always do the interviews. He said he would tell me, Jerry doesn't like doing the interviews as much. I'll help you out. And then he would give me some good information. And the best thing about Dan that I always liked, he would give you real information, and it wasn't like trainer speak real information. He would really tell you like, yeah, we just do not know if this horse is going to fit. We just are completely going to try to stretch out and see if it takes a shot. Just like you could tell that he was being genuine always. And I always appreciated that because the negatives or any information you can use, right? It's not always like, hey, I love my horse. A lot of times everybody loves their horse. Sometimes it's hey, you know what? Let's take a wait and see approach. If he runs well today, play him next time. Like I love hearing that kind of a thing. And shout out to Dan, who's now going to be out on his own and having strings a few different places. DZ, let's move to a stakes pick 4 that starts in the Wolf Hill. It's a 5.5 furlong turf sprint. And in this 9th race, at least just looking to the outside of the field, the 4 horses that are entered, that are drawn to the outside, starting with Just Jeremy, really fast, seems like pretty much one way to go. He has a couple races where he's sort of fallen into sitting a trip. 4 Harp, very, very fast. Looks like he wants to go. Same sort of thing. He's had the 1 or 2 where he could fall into it. Then you have That's Right, who he doesn't even want to fall into it. He's just flying. He will fly early. And you also have Nothing Better, who is really, really fast. Those 4 horses are all drawn right next to each other, and they're all drawn to the outside in this field. If they all stay in here, they could be cooking early.
In the words of the late, great Sam McKee, things could get a little bit Western early on here.
Yeah.
There is no lack of speed in this race. As turf sprints often do produce these types of fields. I will make note that there is a rain in the forecast for tomorrow night. We're recording this Thursday. So the night before the card, there is a chance of some pretty strong thunderstorms in the area. So be on the lookout for that. Get a look, see what the turf course looks like. It could certainly have some give to it. But yes, all of the speed to the outside, it almost looks too logical on paper on how you're going to, handicap this race.
Yeah.
Look, for me, if Whitty doesn't win this race from off the pace, I don't know.
This is the spot, right?
This is the spot. Yeah. I mean, if I were the connections of this horse and I'm looking at how this got drawn up, post position standpoint, where the speed is coming from.
Yep.
You
coming off of coming off that race where you chased like a lone speed horse and you got sharpened up a little bit. It was only his second start on the turf, so it really felt like his first start on the turf. honestly, too, because that last one was like going long on a soft turf course that you can just put a line right through.
Yep.
So, yeah, I completely agree. Like, this just feels like the spot for him. It all, like, the upside's there with him. And we talk about the upside a lot because the pedigree that he has. Whitty is a sibling to Caravel. And, you know, you watch him behind Four Harp last time out, there's no, like, it just makes sense. Oh, yeah, a speed horse got the lead that day and was able to keep going. Caravel, man, I've tried to beat a few of these times.
Oh, God, yeah.
And she just, she's been impressive. There have been a couple times where she's gotten sort of the benefit of the doubt and things sort of broke her way. But then recently,
she broke my heart on Belmont Day. I had Big Invasion.
You did. You were that was one
my
of your best
God.
bets we talked about. You were very high.
I still can't believe he didn't reel her in.
No. And Whitty, it feels like the spot. I just don't love, like, I could see people wanting to make the case for Midday Image. Like, it feels like he'll get the trip. He'll get a fine trip.
If he gets that trip that he got in April, he could be very dangerous if he falls into that type of trip. Yeah.
That type right there. You have a horse like Belgrano, who the race should set up for him if he's got a little bit of his punch left. Like, I think he'll be closing, and his best races are solid. Like, he's an honest 9-year-old.
You have to use him. Use him.
If you're playing pick fours and stuff, like, you know what you're going to get for him. If there's not a lot of speed in a race, he doesn't have a shot. If they go quick, he can win the race. And
100%. I mean, and to be honest with you, like, Whitty is almost too logical to the point where he's going to be like the wise guy horse and take.
He's going to get way over bet, right? His first click, he's going to open up at like 2-1. Yeah. You know,
but for me, I mean, when you look at this race, which I think when you take a look at the 5 inside runners, whichever one of them gets the right trip, I think is the winner. And maybe Eamon is going to drop way too far out of it here, but
and for the same reason, that's also why the rail draw doesn't bother me as much with him, right? Because, like, he shouldn't be involved with any of the other horses next to him. He should just take way back and then just sort of tip to the outside. He won't have traffic. But with Joel aboard, with him and his late running style and how fast they could be going already, he could just be way too far back.
He could be. He does have I mean, I'm a Ragas and sheet guy. He does have the best Ragas pattern in the field for whatever that's worth.
The 2 races going 5 are very good.
They are. No, they are. Absolutely.
And then even before his race last time out at Gulfstream, when you just sort of dive into some of his company lines, you know, he's behind Carruthers, who went up to Woodbine and is graded stakes placed. He's behind Dr. Zemph, who's a Group 3 winner and is a horse who's very good and capable. We're going to see Therapist in a minute. He's a graded stakes winner. So those aren't bad races that he's actually facing graded stakes horses in non-graded stakes races, right? So they don't look as tough on paper because you don't see the grade 2s and grade 3s. But when you know who these horses are, that's solid company for him.
Oh, it is. And if he escapes at a price, you know, I could certainly build tickets around him. You know, would it shock me if he came storming down the center of the track to win? It wouldn't shock me by any stretch of the imagination. But for me, he's the type of horse that you can really build like vertical exotics around. You know, if he's going to be 13-1, you know, and you have him second and, you know, you key off of him 1, 2, 3 in exactas and tries, he might be the type that could really spice up those vertical exotics and use him as a saver as well in the horizontals in case he does find the right trip.
Yep. Totally agree. Fun race, a lot of speed, could be some chaos. And what's nice about a race like this too is you have a lot of these closers who their form can be muddied up sometimes in turf sprints because they're just at the mercy of racing luck, right? Like they don't have the type of speed where they can control their own trip a lot. But this feels like the race for some of those horses. Like if, you know, Belgrano, Eamon, who we're talking about, this could be a race for them to finally get that trip. And if they're good enough, they'll have every opportunity to come running late. The start of an all-stakes pick 4 that ends with the grade 1 Haskell, race 9 at Monmouth Park on Saturday. Darin Zoccali joins me as we move along to a string of 3 consecutive graded stakes races. This one's the Molly Pictor, and this one will have search results trying to win this race back-to-back. DZ, I have become such a fan of this horse because I think she may have at least 2, maybe 3 of like the best efforts I've ever seen from a horse in losing.
Oh yeah, the
Search
Ogden Phipps,
results.
the Ogden
Uh,
Phipps last year, the
but
personal engine last year,
and
and the Ogden
even
Phipps
again
this year.
yeah, like the three of them where it's just she was given the perfect ride, the perfect trip. They did everything they could to try to soften up the speed in front of them, get the jump on the closers coming from behind, get that margin, and then just get your heart broken right on the wire. So they say, you know what? We'll probably come back and face some of the big gals later in the year. Let's see if we can get a softer spot. Let's go over to Monmouth Park. We talk about horses' running styles and stuff. Like her running style fits perfect for a place like Monmouth because she just is so versatile and attractive. She just puts herself right in the race. She can sit really close, but she will face a kind of a fun other couple horses in here. I mean, from a talking standpoint, at least, when you have a horse who's won their last three races by 12, 4.5, and 11.5, and has done it like with ease, you never really know how good a horse like this can be. I'm talking about Loved.
Yeah, Loved is the, what might become type of horse here because, last time out she kind of freaked over a sloppy seal track, which sometimes you could be a little bit, curious about, but it's not like her race before that.
That's the key, right? If that was the only race, then we would say maybe she's phony. We don't know. But she's done it multiple times. And if you're just looking at the past performances we're looking at, like look at the different fractions in her last two races.
Mm-hmm.
They went 3 seconds faster to the half mile in her last race. And she was still right there on the lead, pushed through, and then just moved on with ease. So it wasn't like, they went 50 to the half mile and she just pushed through and crushed. Like they were going pretty quick. She was dealing with some pressure and just sort of put that horse away. She's kind of fun to watch when you watch her races. Like I have no clue how good she is, but 3 times in a row, she's been like, wow.
And she's beat next out winners in, a couple of those starts as well. The horse that ran second to her in that allowance event came right back to win. So it's not like she's not beating just slouches either.
Mm-hmm.
From a Ragozin standpoint, she's run 3 consecutive numbers that are practically identical. So it's not like you have to worry about a bounce or anything like that. Has she run as fast as search results has run? No. But search results also has not gotten really back to that form from a Ragozin standpoint of the Molly Pitcher last year. Now she certainly might, but you're going to have to take, 8 to 5 in the morning line. I think she's probably going to take a little bit more money than that because everyone's going to see the horses that she's been running against. The horse that intrigued me a little bit, because I thought there were a lot of horses when you go through this field, Falconet, search results, first to act, they're all kind of looking for the same trip here.
Trip.
I thought Leda Vita was interesting.
Yeah.
Just to the outside of search results. She's really gotten herself in good form. She's making kind of slow and steady progress from a speed figure standpoint. She ran the best race of her life last time out at Thistleton in the Lady Jacqueline Stakes. She's obviously has never beaten a field like this, but she wasn't really disgraced in the Grade 2 Azeri behind Secret Oath and Clariere.
No.
I thought she ran pretty well there. She's kept some good company running behind horses like Amo Ray as well in the past.
I think that's the key too, right? Because even though she might be a little light overall on speed figures when you're maybe comparing her to search results, we know the company that she's kept. So even if those races came back a little light here or there, like I'm more concerned with who she's facing in some of those races. And Amorier has been in really nice form. Like a horse like Lovely Ride is almost always going to beat her in short fields because what hurts La Vida is, her lack of early speed.
Right.
So a lot of the time she's just running for second or third, but there are absolutely versions of this race, like you were pointing out, where you get Falconet, you get search results who's just aggressive here because they think she's the best horse and they want to keep her out of trouble and just have her close. Loved is going to be there first to act, pushing the pace, wouldn't shock. And even a horse like Shotgun Hottie, or if distinctly possible, who was close up and ran the career best effort being close. Like you said, if all of them, I don't think they're going to line up 6 across the track, right? But if all of them are in a group, like searching for the same spot or two and they push each other around. And then you've got a horse like Levita who's super comfortable at the back.
Yeah.
Just sloping along.
Yeah, I totally agree. And her rider is having a career year as well. He's really opened up some eyes, running, putting forth some brilliant rides and some big races out in the Midwest at Churchill and at Keeneland as well. So yeah, I like you said, I think there's a version of the race that can produce her in terms of a win. Do I expect search results to not show up here? No,
No.
I don't. But at the same time, it just comes down to when we get to post time what the value looks like, and I think Leda Vita might offer a bit more value than the others.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think Leda Vita, because if search results gets beat, I think it's because they went too fast. Like I'm trying to play out in my head why she gets beat. I don't know if there's a horse in here. I mean, maybe Love just coasts and search results can't
If she's
get
a
to her,
freak, right?
right? Maybe that does
Loved
happen.
being a freak, and this being her coming out party is definitely a possibility.
So that to me, like those would be the three ways I'm playing this race out in my head. Love, freak, search results. We just know she's the best. She gets a good trip and she wins. Or they all go at each other too quick early, and that's Leda Vita. Like that's the way I think this race shapes up. One of those ways. I'd be pretty surprised if it was one of the others, because I do think those are three quality horses. And so I think if one of those horses gets their preferred trip here, they're going to win the race.
Yeah.
They're going to take advantage of it. That's the Molly Pictor race number 10. Two more graded stakes races to discuss. We've got the United Nations. And in this race, DZ, this is not a proven group. And what's crazy, no Chad Browns.
Yeah.
There's no Chad Browns in here. And when you look at the field for the United Nations, Red Knight has 4 graded stakes wins in North America, and the rest of the field combined has 4 graded stakes wins in the U.S. I say that because Planetario has 2 more in Brazil. So if you want to expand it, you can say Red Knight has 4, and the rest of the field has 6 group or graded stakes wins overall. From a class standpoint and from what he's done, his resume really does tower over everyone else in here. The concern with the horse like him, though, is running style.
Sure.
Even if he was hands down the classiest horse in any race he's in, he's not fast early.
Totally agree. And at a short price, I don't think you could bet him in this race. I really don't. I respect the fact that he has been facing better company. Last time out, I don't think there's any debate that Up to the Mark is the best turf horse in the country. So getting beat 4 lengths by him last time out, I don't think is anything to scoff at. And I do respect the fact that he's run some big races against some quality horses, Soldier Rising, being one of them. But this particular race, when you have him at a short price, Planetario, I suppose, can win, but
we want him to be double the price that he is. That's my problem with Planetario here.
Yeah. And I mean, coming out of a race at 1 3/4 miles, I'm always a little bit skeptical because those fields, for the most part, are not really as good as the horses going 1 1/4 miles, 1 3/8 usually. The horses that go to Southern California and run on the turf have not really had a ton of success shipping east again and running against turf horses and winning. The dirt horses certainly have. The turf horses have been a bit of a different story. So now I'm at the point where I have legitimate concerns about the 2 morning line favorites.
Mm-hmm.
I think Catnip gets a trip here.
I do too.
He's got to win over the course. He's obviously developed into career best form here.
He's probably the second fastest horse in this race, right?
I would say so. Yeah, I would say
behind
so.
So High, if they go with So High and he's just sitting right behind. I mean, I don't think he is going to gun to the lead, but I think they could maybe let that horse go. And he's peaking. He's getting better. And as we talk about the race not being like the quality of a grade 1, I have no problem using him in here because of that, right? Like I don't look at his race and see a bunch of graded stakes wins on his resume, but nobody in this field has that.
No, exactly. For me, he's by far my A horse and my B horse's therapist, who I thought ran well at Ellis last time. He's got to win in 1.5 miles in a grade 2 in the Pan American, which is more than a lot of these can say. So I give him a little bit of credit for that. Maker obviously has a history of claiming horses like this and turning them into, turf marathon runners. We've seen it time and time again. A horse like Limited Liability, I have the same concerns with him as I do for Red Knight. You are going to have a better price on Limited Liability than Red Knight, so I could see liking him a little bit more. But for me, this is a pretty heavy lean on Catnip.
Yeah, I'm gonna
Therapist,
single Kaepernick
yeah,
probably in a spot or two.
yeah. Therapist, there'll be an exotics play with me with limited liability, and I'm going to try to beat the two chalks.
Yeah, I throw in a little therapist. I probably have a ticket where I'm using Planetario because I will include some prices in some of the other races, but completely swinging against Red Knight in here just as a horse who I think is going to be too far out of it in the type of race where we just don't see that much early speed in here at all.
Who would you say out of the rate from, because we do like some prices, and we talked already about a little bit about the Haskell and the Knox and the favorites. For you, of the favorites, and there's quite a few of the short price favorites in the morning line. For me, the most likely winner is probably search results. Who is it for you?
Yes, I would agree.
Okay.
That would be the one that I wouldn't just completely throw out.
Right.
If you're playing the pick fours and pick fives, and again, it's all about how you're putting your tickets together and your pick fours. You want to make sure you're not using your chalks in every single race and going A, B, C. So I'm not tossing search results in the other races. Like, I'm not using Red Knight at all.
Gotcha.
Like that's how I'll approach it. And we'll turn the page to the feature, the Grade 1 Haskell. Man, good group for a race like this at this time of the year. As he said, you don't usually get 12 or 14 in a race like the Haskell, but you've got the Kentucky Derby winner, Mage. You've got Tappet Trice, who was the second choice in the Derby, who's your Bluegrass winner, and who has all along been talked about and discussed as one of the top 3-year-olds in the class. And they're not even going to be favored, or they're not the morning line favorite. Arabian Night for Baffert, who was very good early on in his career. He's 5-2, but we haven't seen him in 6 months. And then in that next tier of horses, you have two really, really kind of now horses with Go Rocket Ride and Extra Anejo. Extra Anejo was supposed to be a monster all along, right? Asmussen has loved this horse from the beginning. We heard great things about him. He breaks his maiden with a 92 Beyer speed figure, and he wins by 9+. And everything really makes sense when you look at Extra Anejo too. DZ, this is a fun race to discuss.
No, it really is. And like we talked about, it brings together those first half of the year, big time 3-year-olds, the horses that have either won big races, were supposed to win big races. And then this other group of 3-year-olds that are kind of like the now promising types. One thing this race does not lack is horses that are looking for position up front early. And Arabian Night drawing the far outside only adds to that because, look, he's quick for sure. He's got that SoCal speed, even though he's never raced in Southern California. But, he's had 2 races where he's not had a horse in front of him either time. So it's hard to imagine that they're going to try to rate him in this spot just because he drew to the outside. And there's plenty of other speed down towards the inside that's going to keep him honest enough early.
Yeah, Arabian Night is quick, but even right next door, he'll have Extra Anejo. I don't think they're going to want to get him in a battle. How Great Is Nate isn't exactly slow. And then the 3 horses to the inside, you could see really any combinations of them if they wanted to get aggressive and just hold their positioning with Go Rocket Ride. Awesome Strong is coming out of a sprint race, and he's been right on the lead and set some pretty quick fractions in races. And Salute the Stars can press. So I don't think it's going to be an easy spot for him. And in talking this out with you, as we've done this before, we weren't all that high on, some of the, the horses who might be the major players in here. Is that getting you to like Extra Anejo and Go Rocket Ride as horses who probably in the mix for you?
Well, Extra Anejo for me, the concern with him is he's going to have to go quick to keep Arabian Night from getting to an early lead.
Yep. Is he like the sacrificial lamb here?
And I think he's in the tough spot because if Arabian Night does clear him, now Extra Anejo could be in a spot where he could be stuck 4 wide into the first turn in the second flight of runners. So I'm a little bit concerned about the trip with him. I know Asmussen has liked them all along. The Ellis Park rate certainly passed the eye test. If you're a Ragozin guy, he's got to improve because he's coming off an 11 in that race. Arabian Night ran an 8 as a 2-year-old, ran a 10 in the Southwest. None of those horses, none of those figures are up to the Derby winner Mage, who ran a 5, obviously in the Kentucky Derby, and then bounced 2 weeks later in the Preakness, going back to a 10. So if you're a Ragozin guy, there are some interesting patterns that have developed here. The 2 best patterns in the race are the 2 horses that I like the most for a lot of different reasons. Go Rocket Ride is paired up 9s. I love the fact that he's drawn to the inside. He's going to save ground. He's got enough tactical speed to assert his position, to keep his position going into the first turn, and just needs to be able to get out of that spot when they turn for home and make a run. And Salute the Stars, who ran over this track, ran a career best race in the Pegasus, ran a 9 in that spot on the Ragozin, came and picked up Kings Barnes in that spot, who when he gets on an easy lead is certainly no slouch. And for me, those are the two that I'm going to be focused on. If Mage wins, is it possible for me to hit a pick 4 based on the right combination? It is. But he's the only one of the 3 favorites that I'm going to use at all in any type of multi-race exotics, and it's going to be on a backup ticket. Tapatrice wins, he beats me. Arabian Night wins, he beats me.
It's funny, we're almost identical. The only slight difference is I'll probably use Tapatrice on a backup ticket. I'm going to have no Mage and no Arabian Night at all. But for me, the bulk of the exotics are Go Rocket Ride, Extra Anejo in the mix, and Salute the Stars. Like, it's that next tier. We're right there. And I think that's how you should play this race if you're trying to beat those horses, right? Those are the next group of horses that make sense. They're peaking at the right time. They're not as proven. They haven't won the biggest races yet, but that's why we're going to be getting a little bit better value on them. Mm-hmm. And I like for all of them, like you pointed out perfectly, Go Rocket Ride should get a great trip. Go Rocket Ride, he missed getting a chance to run in the Santa Anita Derby, which would have given him the chance to run in the Kentucky Derby. So now maybe he's a little fresher horse at this time of the year than some of the other horses who have had to deal with the Derby or maybe had to deal with some others. He's only run once over the last few months. If he's in a battle here, he might be ready for a fight. The 3, I think this horse is going to get really forgotten about too. Yeah. Like, I feel like if this horse hits,
somebody has to. They can't all get back.
Right, in a pick 4 or pick 5, this horse is going to play even more, I think, than 8-1.
Wow.
Because everyone's talking about the big 3 that we mentioned with Mage, with Arabian Night, with Tapatrice. And then after those big 3, there's like the next 2. That would be Go Rocket Ride and Extra Anejo that are like, these are the more intriguing horses I'm going to bet. And I feel like this horse is just going to get lost in the shuffle. And I want to use him for that reason. He ran a really good race against Kings Barnes last time out, and he just keeps stepping forward. He keeps answering the test each time. One more step forward puts him right there. Salute the Stars in the mix for me and DZ as we finish up Monmouth Park Saturday card for Haskell Saturday. 5 graded stakes races on the card. We've got 4 stakes races in a row in a pick 4 from races 9 through 12. Darin Zoccali, you can follow him on Twitter. Make sure to do so at the track 7. DZ, you do a lot of great stuff over there with Twin Spires. We see videos from you all the time, handicapping selections. Let everybody know what's going on this week and what can we find from you?
Yeah, we got a lot going on. We put out a racing roundtable from Tuesday where we went over a couple of things that took place last weekend in racing. We're going to have another video going out this week called The Jury with myself, Ashley Anderson, James Scully. We talked about some of our best bets, favorites that we don't necessarily like. We went over the Haskell, some of the big races at Saratoga as well. So be sure to check that out through Twin Spires social media. A couple of great promotions this weekend as well. Actually, we have a lot of great promotions. I can't believe the slate that we have out there. I think we have about a dozen promos going on right now at Twin Spires, but we have a really cool one that gets underway Friday with the start of the Del Mar meet. For all of the days that Del Mar and Saratoga are both racing throughout the month of July. So it's the 3 days this week and the 4 days next week. We're offering a $5,000 coast-to-coast challenge. It's going to be selected races at both tracks, and then you have to make a $10 win bet in each of those races. If you have the most winners from those races, you're going to win $5,000.
And you're already playing those races
every day. Yeah.
And like, you're already going to be watching and playing those races. So just opt in and make sure to check out all the details on those promotions. So that way, you know, you're playing the right races, you know exactly how to qualify for them. Take advantage, DZ. He's creative with those types of things. Darin's someone who himself has been a gambler through the years, a fantasy player who has been involved in DFS and all sorts of different things. He's always kind of thinking creatively outside the box. What are things that are fun, that'll help maybe put a few extra bucks back in people's accounts, back in their pockets? And DZ, I always know that whenever we handicap the races, whenever we talk wrestling, whenever we talk about anything, it's going to be a passionate discussion, and you're always going to have done your homework and come ready to rock. That's why we've gotten along from day one. No matter what we're discussing, we're always prepared, ready to go, and it seems like we have a really fun sequence and some vulnerable favorites this weekend at Monmouth Park.
Yeah, this is shaping up for one of those days where it's like at the end of the day, you're cracking open your favorite cocktail and going, man, I was on point today, made a killing, cleaned up on the day. I was seeing the ball well. Or it's a chalk fest and everything
4 in a row
was wrong.
right? And it's just chalk dusting. Because
Yeah.
like you're saying, what's nice is that if you beat these chalks, we don't need 25 to 1 shots at Monmouth, right? We got some of these 5, 8 to 1 shots that are in that nice tier of prices and some reasons to take swings against these favorites.
Exactly.
This weekend, Monmouth Park. Make sure to give Darin a follow at the Track 7 and check out all the great work he's done on social media. Don't go anywhere, folks. Still a lot more to come on this episode of